Egypt has been a country that we deal with very closely. They have things under control. The countries that we have don't have things under control. And why now? I can say that it can't come soon enough, frankly. We want to keep bad people out of our country.
So that was President Trump earlier today explaining why Egypt is not among the nations including in this new travel ban of his. He cited the Colorado terror attack as a reason for the restrictions when he announced it last night. Of course, the suspect, as we've been talking about, is an Egyptian national. Now, here is the new ban. It bars all travel from 12 countries. Also expands travel restrictions for 7 others, expected to face some legal challenges. In his first term, the president, when he was in office the first time around, ended up with the Supreme Court ultimately upholding a modified version of his travel ban, which was aimed at a slightly different list of countries. It's a controversial policy, though. It sparked chaos at the airports, for example, widespread protests as well in the early days of his first term. Let's bring in now the former ICE Director John Sandweg to talk more about this one. Welcome, John. How would you compare the two?
Well, I think it's a little bit of night and day here. I mean, the administration learned its lessons from the first go-round. So, Connell, they've given plenty of notice to CBP, so we won't see as much of that chaos, giving the officers out on the front lines time to adjust and get ready for what this policy requires of them. But then, two, is they provided a stated kind of thoughtful rationale for each country as to why they were selecting that country. And moreover, they did this slowly. They announced the intent to do this back in January, right after the president was sworn in, and then didn't roll it out until now, until June. So I think they've done a good job of insulating themselves against these legal challenges. There are always going to be lawsuits. They could always lose some of them. But I think compared to the first couple of go-rounds on this one during the first Trump administration, they have certainly done a much better job of arming, preparing, I guess, for those court challenges.
What about the Egypt question, which you heard the president respond to? Because when he made the announcement, he put the video out last night, he said that the attack in Boulder really has underscored, that was his term, underscored the extreme dangers posed by people coming in. But then Egypt's not on the list. Issue for you or non-issue?
The president often says things that I think are somewhat contradicted by the policies. Connell, I think a lot of this is also their diplomatic considerations that go into play here. I don't know the specific factors that led to them excluding Egypt. I would say there are 2 main factors cited in this executive order. The first is, what is the overstay rate, meaning of how many visas we give your citizens, what percentage of them tend to overstay? For the majority of these countries, in terms of the stated justification, it was that they have a high overstay rate. I think the second category, of course, was a couple of the countries have lost control of their governments or don't have adequate, oversight in their, or in their country. And by that, I mean that the U.S. relies heavily on information sharing. We have a lot of databases, a lot of our own intelligence and law enforcement records that we use to vet visa applicants, but we also rely on information sharing with the host governments. And in those countries, they don't have the capacity to provide that information with us. But again, I can't point to the specific reasons. Of course, it is not the best look politically that right after this attack where you have a visa overstay from Egypt, they're not on the list.
Now, the other thing, they were clear, though, to be fair, on a lot of the exemptions this time around, which was part of, I think, maybe the chaotic environment the last time around. If you want to pop it up from the tablet, I've got a few examples because a lot of people wondered, like with Afghanistan on the list, what about these Afghans who had helped the U.S. During the war? But there will be an opportunity there for an exemption through the special visa program. Athletes and coaches were mentioned. A lot of people brought up the World Cup. And then Iranians fleeing religious persecution as 3 of the exemption examples. But they did spell that out this time.
Yeah, it's going to help, although some of these exemptions are going to be difficult to implement right at the port of entry. So you look at Iranians fleeing religious persecution, CBP officers sitting at JFK Airport are going to have a real hard time determining whether or not the person falls into that. They also did provide flexibility for the Secretary of State and the Attorney General on a case-by-case basis if in the national interest of giving an exemption. Connell, there's going to be some confusion here. I will say 2 things very quickly. One is, for the most part, the countries they selected have very low numbers of visas annually. Like Republic of Congo is a total of 2,000 visas issued to Congolese, Republic of Congo citizens in the last year. So it's not a high volume of individuals. That's not true for Venezuelans, Iranians, Cubans, and especially when you look at those countries, you have large expat populations that this is going to hit pretty hard. So a lot of Persians who live in the United Kingdom who might not have dual citizenship and not have that UK citizenship, remain Iranian citizens, but residents of the United Kingdom. They're going to have some troubles here. But writ large, you're going to see less confusion because two things. One is they spelled out those exemptions, and two is they gave time to get guidance out to the field, something we didn't see last time that really created that chaos.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.